Travel day for the Buffalo Bills as they'll have their lone joint practice with the Cleveland Browns tomorrow afternoon. Before practice, we do expect to hear from Bills head coach Joe Brady. And stay tuned, Sal Capaccio is going to join the show a little bit later on tonight at 5:30 to talk more on what is to come over the next few days. There were plenty of injuries today across the league. Charger center Tyler Biadasz is out indefinitely with damage to his ACL and other injuries in his left knee. Texans wide receiver Jaden Higgins is going to be out the rest of the year. He suffered a torn ACL yesterday. And then Saints running back Alvin Kamara, he's going to be out at least the next month with a sprained MCL. The Seahawks are adding to their secondary. They're signing cornerback Trayvon Diggs. Seattle, though, is still reportedly planning to sign Terrion Arnold, even though he is expected to land on the commissioner's exempt list. But at least for today, they are signing Trayvon Diggs. Then over in baseball, Bison's already in action today. They do trail Lehigh Valley 2-1. That game is in the 8th. The Mets lead the Padres 2-1 as well. That one is in the 7th. Yankees are at Baltimore a little bit later on tonight at 6:35, and then 5 minutes after that at 6:40, the Jays are at Tampa Bay. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
Monday, Tuesday, hump day is halfway. It's Mike Schopp.
Mike. What day is it, Mike?
And the Bulldog.
Hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on. I know you can hear me.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo!
On WGR.
Hump day!
Sports Radio 550.
Just opened up my current notebook. Here it is from the fabulous Two Sisters Vineyards in Niagara-on-the-Lake. This little baby. I don't know. Maybe sometimes I do write on the backs. What I tried to do, I had a strategy with this one, like a new notebook. What's better? Don't answer that. I mean, just rhetorically speaking, what's better? What I wanted to do with this one was use the backs of pages for like important sort of evergreen kind of things like stats. So I don't know that I want to have to dig so hard for Bills receiving touchdown leaders the last 2 years. Boom. I know this is the kind of thing I would have used the left side for. There it is, the left side. But I made myself angry today just randomly opening the notebook to World Cup Survivor strategy stuff. There, you just saw it if you're watching. I know that was a riveting moment. And so Survivor pools, right? One more thing we have to care about as the football season comes closer. This World Cup one, so excited to do it. Probably a little bit naive, but maybe it was two $50 entries, something like that. Okay. And, all right, well, you have to use a certain number. You can only use a team once. This is back, remember the World Cup? So you can only use a team once. You had to pick 4 teams to get through the group stage. And then, sometimes you had to pick 2 in one day or in one little section. But really, basically, you're trying to get all the way to the end and win. And it's winner take all. If more than one person gets to the end, then they split the pot. It was maybe $100,000, in a prize pool. So here I am going along. Everything's going my way. And I get to the semifinals. And let's see. It was France against Spain. And it was England against Argentina. And I had to get them both right if I was going to have any chance of winning, because I had used Argentina and I had used Spain. So the only way for me to win was to pick from France or England, but they both had to win because I needed the other one in the final. What happens? They both lost. And it just annoys me to look back at this because I did so well, but I didn't win. Isn't that betting for you? I did so well. It all made the process. He shouted from his front door as his family left in a limo. That's not my original thought, but I love it. No, I was right. As your kids and your wife leave forever, last time they ever, you ever see their faces is when you're screaming at them how your bet on Morocco was actually correct. A little bit dramatic, but so I didn't want to open to this page, but I did. And I was going to say this yesterday, and I want to preface it by saying that as somebody who willingly and excitedly signed up for the Seneca Casino Survivor Pool when Bulldog and I were there about a month ago when they launched it, and I can't ever say no. So yes, I'm in 2 times, $50 each. I think it might have been the same thing. 2 entries. And Tony, the cool guy that sat with us and basically laid out the whole contest, like, you're going to have to come here to make your picks every week. Like, fine. And then I sign up and I take the papers back to my desk and put them in my work bag. I'm like, I'm going to have to come back here every week unless I lose, but I don't want to lose. So anyway, fine. I'm glad to be a part of that, and I'll do my best. This one, though, this soccer one, and it's Splash Sports, Kelly in Vegas, who I don't know, but she became someone I knew of from Joe Ostrowski and Sam Panayotovich and their BetQL and BetMGM shows. She would be kind of a regular on there, like, okay, well, I'll do this. This is fun. That was whatever. Like, they have one for every sport. World Cup, fine. But this one, okay, and I should have known from the beginning, and I hate to have soured on it, but I think the actual number was the most entries you can submit is 133. Here's Brad getting into me for my little 260 fantasy teams like it's anything. The most entries you can submit is 130, whatever, it doesn't even matter. Say it's 100. I entered 2 times. It got to the point where out of almost, I have it here, but I'm scarred. I don't want to even look at the page. Out of 4,000 some hundred number of teams, a handful were left, and I'm one of them. Both my teams didn't advance. I had Germany at one point. They lost. But still, like, I was in the mix to win the tournament. But I knew, and I am somebody, Bulldog talks about spreadsheets with all these teams. I am like this, and it's not the best use of time, but I went through everybody who was still alive, everybody's entry. All right, what do they have left? And there were teams that were drawing dead. Then there were teams that had everybody. I thought I was in position A by having France left. It turns out you needed to have Spain left. Anyway, I do all that, quote, work. I do all that research. I'm like, all right, well, what is the odds play, And what you realize is some of these entries are people that did the 133 max entry thing. And there's probably a pool of people, a group of people that have gone in together on this stuff. I think that's the circuit tournaments. I know it is. I think like a lot of these big tournaments, you're playing against groups. And when it gets late, you're seeing those groups bet against themselves because you're just trying to get one to the end or whatever. I mean, if it's more than that, even better. And it's so depressing. The one year I won, I wonder if Jeremy might be listening and remembers this. The one year I won a Survivor pool, it was, I don't know, 10, 11 weeks into the season. It was like here, Paul maybe ran it. So it's everybody from work and all of Paul's friends and I don't know, 50 or 100 people. And we get to week 11 or something and it's like me and Jeremy. And like, let's just chop it. Let's just split it. But you're basically, what it is whether it's like that direct or just broader, you're working with your quote teammates, you're working with other people in the room to ensure yourself some of the money. And, I think that kind of ruins Survivor for me. I love the concept, but I don't want to play against, person from the station, their wife, their son, their daughter, their dog, just because there's no limit. They're friends. Hey, come on in. We have a Survivor pool. Great. And then it's sort of like that one person becomes 20. And I don't know how you beat that. I mean, you have to just run perfect just to split it with 4 whoever's, from, I don't know. I didn't even want to talk about this. especially because yesterday I got grouchy, and I didn't want to be grouchy 2 days in a row. I had a different idea. And it was going to be sort of a donkey ranking. Donkey rankings. So last night, I'll explain. So last night on ADP Chasing, fantasy football podcast I do with 3 friends, Jacob, Davis, and Pat, really focused on best ball fantasy stuff. That show it's famous for, among its legions of fans, I mean, it's a 5 to 10,000 views every week, for going off the grid. I mean, just the amount of time we've spent on that show this summer on Alexander the Great can really not be explained. But it happened. So last night, they're talking about the big news in the NFL this week and what it means for fantasy. And one of them is the Giants signing Najee Harris. Like, all right, well, that's significant. I'm a fantasy player. I'm watching this podcast. What should I do about it? Do I want to draft Najee Harris? Do I want to not draft Cam Scattaboo or Tyrone Tracy? What about Devin Singletary, who's still there? What about the rest of the Giants? And usually I'm the type to think and to say, look, nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows who's good. Nobody knows really what the role is. When it's ever the least bit ambiguous, you really can't act like you know what's going to happen. But I got off on the Giants last night. John Harbaugh, Matt Nagy, Greg Roman, Brian Callahan. I still confuse Matt Nagy with Adam Gase. It's one of them. I think it's Nagy. John Harbaugh, Matt Nagy, Greg Roman, Brian Callahan. Can you imagine? Well, this is really a question for myself. Can you imagine if the Bills were in the current state of being the Giants and had gone like maybe more than a decade without barely ever being relevant at all? They're kind of a joke. And John Harbaugh comes with some credibility. That's fine. All these guys do. But in total, it looks like you were forced into, to me, it looks like you were forced into these hires. And so guys are just bandying around like what to do with the Giants backfield. I'm like, guys, here's what to do. Skip the whole thing. This is a terrible situation. It's never going to work out. We love Malik Neighbors. We might even like Jackson Dart, but you can't expect the Giants to get this right. If you're calling Najee Harris, due respect, off a torn Achilles to help you because your more talented running back missed a block in a preseason game, you're in bed. Like I was looking at, just, being me, I was looking at running backs available on waivers in fantasy, and the names are just amazing because these are guys that were relevant in the NFL maybe like 2 years ago, if not last year, and they're not on teams. And, in a different light, you wonder sort of what happens to these guys. Where do they go? Where does Antonio Gibson go, right? He was kind of good for Washington. New England tried him on, and then he broke. And so not everybody on this list goes into coaching. So you've got this long Leonard Fournette, who came by here for a minute. Devontae Freeman. These guys are even older than I mean, because, maybe Freeman or Fournette have been out of the league for 3 or 4 years now, maybe more. So what happens to these guys? There are still guys on that list that would seem to be a better bet than Najee Harris, except for that the Giants want Najee Harris to not miss that block. That's what they want from him. I mean, the Bills could have done it. If Ty Johnson is going to miss time and it was third down, I mean, Allen did get hit in that game, but whoever the Frank Gore Jr. or Ray Davis, whoever the running back on the field is, whiffs on a block, maybe the Bills, not knowing what was going to happen with Johnson, maybe they do know and are not worried about it, but say they didn't or were worried, they go into that list and find somebody who can play one specific role, which is not miss that block so that my quarterback doesn't get bent sideways. So the Giants go and get Najee Harris, and that's not nothing, of course. I mean, that's an important role in a team, but it just sort of like hit me hard that that's a team I do not want to be. And this is really the thing. So the Bills have been at this status for the last several years where it's good and bad. It's mostly good. They win all the time. And that's great. They haven't won in the playoffs, and that's probably more about what they're known for, which sort of inherently comes with they're good all the time. Like, you can't be this, well, frankly, perennial playoff loser if you're not good all the time. And it's always double-digit wins, so it's good and bad. But what it has meant to us, and this is good to think about because you can get lost in those playoff losses, is that they have re-established what their place in the league is. And really almost like never before. Most of Bill's history is kind of sad. Like, the 70s were completely lost. You had OJ, but even that became a thing, like different kind of thing. So 70s, no playoff wins. 80s, not until beginning, yes, the bookends of the 80s were interesting, but not like that exceptional. 90s, you have the Super Bowl years, and then they kept it up through the decade until then, poof, it all blows up. Your legends are all gone, and you're into a 17-year playoff drought. Then you get Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, and you have what the last 8 years have been, which is really good. It's just that you're not seeing trophies. So I wanted to tell you the 5 teams in the NFL I think are the worst. Like, this is not the reverse AFC power rankings, and this is not even like not entirely specific to the current roster. But the Giants are definitely one of the 5. The Giants have not been good in so long. They had a fluke year like the Bills had in 2017 where they weren't good at all, but they made the playoffs. They even won a game in that year, winning in Minnesota, but then they got crushed and they were exposed. Like, that's Brian Daboll, Coach of the Year. Great job. I mean, it's like the PDO Jack Adams winners in hockey. Great, great. But it's not really that good. So the Giants when was the last time the Giants, even actually, I don't want to try this hard, but even the Super Bowl teams with Eli Manning were like, they tended to be okay teams that got rolling in the playoffs, perfect timing. Those were not dominant teams. Like, the Giants have had a couple of those over the years. Giants are on the list. No particular order here. The Arizona Cardinals have to be on the list. Like, the top 5 donkey teams in the league. Arizona. What are they doing? I mean, it's another new coach. The quarterback situation is what exactly? Jacoby Brissett, or maybe it'll be Carson Beck. They drafted Carson Beck, but I don't know how good he's actually supposed to be. Arizona, plus their history, Arizona for sure. Giants, Cardinals. The Jets can't be left off a list like this. I mean, this again is a point about how much fun the Bills have been, even though they haven't beaten Kansas City in the playoffs. Even though they haven't made it, it's still been mostly really exciting and fun and good. The Giants, the Cardinals, the Jets might be the worst of all of them. They're never good. It's the longest playoff drought in the league. 2010 or 2011, one of those, is the last team they were in the playoffs. Last year they were in the playoffs. It's always kind of embarrassing, too, with the Jets. The owners' grades before the league was able to strong-arm their way into keeping those private, which, thanks. And his kids using Madden ratings to help on personnel decisions. I mean, come on. The Giants and the Jets take pride in this. The Giants and the Jets, New York teams, for many years, I would say, are two of the 5 most embarrassing NFL teams, if that's not too strong. Giants, Cardinals, Jets. Now I need 2 more. And it's a little bit tougher. I feel like there's a tier break here because those 3, I think, cannot be left off. I'm going Carolina, a defending division champion, but I'm going with Carolina because, right? In this game on Saturday, Bryce Young, first overall pick, that's going nowhere. The coach is kind of cool for what he's been able to do, Baker Mayfield and back in Seattle, Geno Smith in Seattle. Like, he seems maybe capable, but I think I'm staying on the spot that Carolina is in really bad shape for this year. And I think Young might be the worst starting quarterback in the league. They're going to try with Jonathan Brooks. We just had Carolina. I'm not going to go deep on them, but to me, they make the list. Then I need one more. And part of how I started thinking about this was that the Bills are going to Cleveland. And poor Cleveland. I'm going with Miami, though. Miami's the number 5 team on this list of 5 teams. I'm not saying Cleveland. I think Cleveland has been, I know, don't laugh. I think Cleveland has been largely unlucky. I think it was an ownership-driven decision, mandate, with what happened with Watson. And that, that the Bills suffered from some of that over many years. But it's not quite the same to me as when you're just kind of always bad and it sort of makes sense that you're bad. To me, the Browns might have to be the honorable mention on a list like this, but I just don't want to give them my vote. I feel like the Watson thing could have worked out, and the whole controversy about it as the Bills go to Cleveland today and practice with the Browns tomorrow, I'm sure we'll be hearing about Watson and what happens there tomorrow. But the controversy about it, of course, was his off-the-field transgressions, not to put it too mildly. Not necessarily what kind of player he still was. It turns out that he's such damaged goods. And, if that changes, that'll be kind of a miracle at this point, I think. But such damaged goods that I'm not sure I want to blame the Browns for that. I think you can, and everybody has, blame them for the decision to invest in Watson as a person and as a face of the franchise. The fact that his playing ability has so suffered, and then a couple of bad injuries. I think his shoulder might be shot. You've got torn Achilles maybe 2 times. I just think they've run up against a little more than they deserved, the Browns. And the Browns, by the way, have had some great players. Chubb at running back, Myles Garrett, Wyatt Teller. Like, the Browns have had some great players. Mayfield is one where that could have worked, but Mayfield was banged up, and this is where really their lack of stability helps to undermine them. So the Browns are a fine, a fair choice for the top 5 donkey franchises. But I'm going with Miami instead. Miami is what, as a franchise? Last time they won a playoff game was the year 2000. And that was a pretty rich history up until that point. The Dolphins owned the Bills in the 70s. And even if the Bills kind of owned them back, it wasn't because Miami was what the Bills were in the 70s. Miami was mostly good in those years, but they couldn't crack the Bills like 92 in the AFC Championship. And then it's Don Shula, Jimmy Johnson, Hall of Fame coaches. And since then, they've just been this mostly kind of middling, screwed up team situation. Just, the Brian Flores stuff, they haven't really had too often, at least. I mean, Tua was this, but too often, like the high draft pick quarterback that made sense. Miami hasn't done a lot. They're sort of like the drought Bills in this way, where they just kind of tried to patch it together. So Miami makes my list. The Browns don't. And it's not even, I don't think I did that great a job of like exactly specifying what the criteria were for this. But I just wanted to find like how close do the New York Giants come to being like the worst franchise in the league? Pretty close. And maybe John Harbaugh fixes that, but I doubt it. I just think there's just too much. Last night on our podcast, the conversation turned to, do these new coaches, having never really drafted him or seen him before, know what Cam Scadaboo kind of is as a runner? Like, of course they don't. Easy for me to say. Of course they don't. They just know him. He does backflips that don't turn out. He seems like kind of a nut, gets hurt. I'm not sure what they think they have in him. Just one example. So there it is. Just what you wanted. My donkey list to start the show. Okay, that's over. Paul Hamilton coming up next. I want to talk some Sabres. The Sabres got good, and best not to ignore them this summer, which I feel like I've kind of done, not intentionally. So we'll talk some hockey next. 4 o'clock hour, Mike Tenier and Daryl Ryder. Daryl's in Cleveland. We'll talk to him about the Browns and this week. Sal joins me at 5:30 from Cleveland if he isn't there already. Thanks for listening. No Bulldog until Monday. This is Mike Schopp on WGR. talked to Paul Hamilton about the Sabres today because I missed them both. And I'll just reiterate that when it comes to the Sabres, not Paul, of course, but when it comes to the Sabres, not in a while have I gotten to, August 19th and felt like I missed them. Sometimes it's actually felt like a relief that we didn't have, because it was usually bad news, guys were leaving and what wasn't being done. However, this summer is coming toward a close, and it might be worth it to talk about also what hasn't been done. Paul Hamilton on the West Her Hotline. Paul, you up for that conversation?
Yeah. Did you know I was watching Caitlin Clark last night in Toronto?
I did not.
I didn't know if you knew that.
I did not. So that the WNBA is in Toronto now.
Yeah, they normally play where the Marlies play, which is like 7,000 or 8,000 people. But
perfect.
When Caitlin Clark shows up, you play where the Leafs play.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, and it was sold out. I figured it was sold out about 5 days ago. I just went on Ticketmaster to see if I could get a ticket. There were 5 empty seats in different sections, which actually surprised me. So I sat 3 rows from the top of the place. It was like $100 Canadian. It wasn't bad. I didn't think it was a bad price, and enjoyed it.
That's kind of cool when you can do that. If you have enough facilities where you can do that, because it feels to me like 7,000 or 8,000 might be the perfect amount. But then if you have this kind of draw, you need bigger than you have it.
That happens a lot with the Indiana Fever. They wind up in Dallas. It happens.
Okay.
They show up and all of a sudden they're in the big arena instead of whatever arena that the WNBA team is playing in. So
sure.
And a lot of the players, it's kind of funny to listen to them. They're fighting it, and you don't have to like Caitlin Clark or whatever, but you got to admit they weren't playing in those arenas before Caitlin Clark showed up. Whether you like her, you don't, or whatever. She's
a superstar,
and people that's why I was there to go see her play. I've wanted to see her play, and I got the opportunity, and she had a good game. I do watch most of her games on TV, just because I do enjoy watching her play. And I mean, she's doing things assist-wise that have never been done in this league by a lot. And she's still, I believe, around the 3rd or 4th leading scorer in the league. And her team's in first place. You don't have to like her as a fan, but you have to respect what she's doing for the league.
Sure. Apologies if this is not a perfectly fair comparison, but what I'm thinking of with this point you're making about how the Toronto team was able to move to the basically 2.5 times the size of the arena or whatever it actually is, right, reminds me of my days with the Buffalo Blizzard. Uh-huh. And the Blizzard played in the arena in Buffalo, indoor soccer, and almost would never open up the 300s. So you had, several thousand people, but it still came off as, in my mind, it came off as the atmosphere isn't quite what you'd want because the building is maybe half full. Like the top, the big, all the 300s are empty. Then, but there were a couple of teams in the league, Cleveland was one, that played in smaller buildings. Cleveland played at the Cleveland State Convocation Center, which might have been 7,000 or 8,000. It was perfect. And you would get an atmosphere that you just could not get in the big league arenas that were not even half full. So it would have been great for the league and for the fan experience, I think, if you went to smaller buildings. Not every city had the perfect fit. Cleveland did. If you went to smaller buildings and had like a packed house, and maybe the Toronto team has that when they're in the Marlies arena, and then, last night's an exception. But just a better fan experience when you're in a place that's not too big for the event.
It sounds like it's close to that because there was a Tempo season ticket holder in the GO train sitting across from me who, was just staunch on what Caitlin Clark is overrated and all that. But we did get into the Tempo, and she said it is so much fun having them in that smaller 7,000-8,000 seater. And she goes, tonight was fun, yeah, but she said it really is nice to have them in that smaller setting where the Marlies play. By the way, they won the Calder Cup this year. And I've been in there for playoff games with the Marlies, and it is kind of a fun setup that they have.
Rochester's like that.
Sure, because it was I was in there for a couple of playoff games, and so it was well attended. And matter of fact, now that I think about it, the Sabres may have had a preseason game there not a while back. So it doesn't matter. I've been in there for games, and she's right. It is fun to watch, and she said it's fun to watch the tempo in there. This is their first season, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, as they're an expansion team, and it doesn't sound like, from what at least she was saying, and she's a season ticket holder, that they could support like being in. I don't even know the name of the place, wherever the Leafs play.
Scotiabank now?
Thank you. It's been like 9 different things. They really probably couldn't support that right now. I mean, having them in Coca-Cola Center, I think it's called, used to be the Ricoh Center, is more of an attraction and more fun, she said.
Yeah, and just to finish the point, if it hasn't already been made, but like you and I have both been around the American League, and some of those smaller towns with smaller buildings are great times.
Yes.
I mean, I'm thinking about Portland in the past, or Binghamton, Syracuse,
Hershey.
Glens Falls, Hershey, Providence. Even though the building is not necessarily even 10,000 seats.
Rochester.
But,
Rochester. Now that's a little bit bigger than some of the buildings you're mentioning, but when the Amerks went to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago, that place was rocking.
Yeah, that's really fun.
I mean, and now their capacity is somewhat over 10,000. Not a lot, but a little bit, and they were pretty much filling it up for that by the time they got into the Eastern Conference Finals.
Well, Paul, I just wanted to have a little bit of a temperature check moment on the Sabres, as we're now within a month of training camp and preseason games even. I mean, it always is like this, where it doesn't cool off first outside. It just sort of hits you that hockey is here. And when we spoke about them a month and a half ago, I mean, after free agency started, July 1st, okay, well, you never know exactly when to draw the curtain. And all right, that's it. And here we are now to August 19th, and there has not been any movement. There isn't Connor Hellebuck. There isn't some other Alex Tuch replacement, right? Not that we're necessarily expecting that. But where is your mind at on sort of how likely it is that their current roster is going to be their roster?
Probably. And, I mean, prices need to come down. And that doesn't mean that they won't. But they need to come down, and Jarmo Kekalainen is not going to pay the prices that are out there right now. A name that has been out there a little bit, and then it seemed like Columbus might have been willing to trade Marchenko, who is 26 years old. Now, he would be a guy that, not this year, but you would have to sign to a contract fairly soon. But this is also a guy, his last couple of years, 27 goals last year, 31 goals the year before, 67 points and 74 points. And then I say to myself, and I always say this, why would Columbus want to get rid of him? And, well, if you can get the right trade, you can maybe restock your team a little faster if you can get a couple of really, really good prospects out of a team. Or for a talent like that. And he was a hotter commodity, it seemed like, before the draft than maybe he is now. I don't hear too much about him right now. His teammate Werenski was the same way. It was like, and then all of a sudden he comes out and says, "Well, I don't want to be traded. I want to play in Columbus."
Right.
But what does that mean? How many times have we heard that from players? And, it didn't. So I just throw that name out there a little bit, that was a name that was being kicked around as somebody available in the NHL. He's 6'3". He's not Alex Tuch by any means. His goals and point totals aren't too far away. I don't think he does some of the other things that Alex Tuch does, but I certainly think he would be a good addition to the Sabres, depending on what they would have to give up for him. And then knowing that, all right, you're going to have to probably sign him to a contract soon, too, so you better be sure you can do that.
Well, I just want to ask again, at what point, if there is one, where you don't ever slam the door, I guess, on these kind of moves.
You don't.
But at what point, how does the calculus work for the Sabres or an NHL team where you're like, all right, well, Hellebuck or some other player, we would have done it for a certain price. We kind of wanted to at a certain price, but do you not get to a point where you're about to get to camp and then it becomes more disruptive, or feel like maybe you want to get into a season and see if you have a bigger problem than you wanted to have, and then maybe something happens. But it kind of feels to me, my instinct is that a trade between maybe like next week and October 1st, the opener, is just kind of weird.
Yeah, and let's say the problem with the Hellebuck trade was the Sabres were willing to give up the 4th overall pick, but they wanted the 8th back. And Winnipeg wouldn't do it. And Buffalo said, okay, then we're not giving you all that stuff if we're not getting, if we're not flipping spots in the first round. You could still do that. You can look, okay, because Bjork is the guy that Winnipeg took. A lot of folks thought Buffalo might take him at 4 because he was like one of those wild cards at forward from Sweden that a lot of scouts liked. So, and then they wind up taking Rudolph. All right, now both teams know who they have. Let's say Winnipeg approaches you again. And now well, okay, they're willing to do it. So now we get Bjork, who would, as pretty much our first-round pick this year. They get Rudolph for their first-round pick this year. Is that something, now that they know what the names are that are connected to it, would Buffalo be more, would Winnipeg be more open to it? Who knows? So, but you have to kind of reconstruct the trade because the trade was, well, Winnipeg's going to get 4 and 8. Well, okay, now there are names put to that. All right, we're not giving you 4 and 8, but now that you know the names, do you want to do it in Buffalo's case, you could say, do you want to do it the right way?
Well, apart from any specifics, though, I still want to try to get this across. Like, whenever camp opens, like 3 weeks away, thereabouts, yeah. I mean, do you think that's a deadline for teams that, all right, well, now Luukkonen, say, or whether it's Rudolph or someone else, like, now we're at a point where guys report, and we don't want them. I feel like this is right, but I'm asking you. Like, we don't want them looking over their shoulder about trades anymore, right? For a while, like you show up for this season, you're on this team.
We could almost be there now. I don't think there is a deadline, so to speak, but there's a point, and I think we've hit it, where it is likely a big thing isn't going to happen. You always know it could. But, it gets to a point where it's likely that it won't.
Right.
Now, what else is different? Luukkonen is another one that's different. Is Winnipeg on his no trade, which kicked in on July 1st? You could have traded him before the draft or at the draft. He didn't have a no trade then. It's only a few teams, but is Winnipeg one of those few teams? And then if it is, well, that shoots the trade right there.
Right.
You can't even talk about it basically because that's who they would want, and he would have to waive it to go to Winnipeg. So that possibly could have finished it right there if Winnipeg is on that list.
So you're kind of saying here, like, we might be at that point already where we're sort of like the poker game is over. And Winnipeg is interesting though, Paul, because they might have pressure to do the thing that the Sabres don't. That's always been true here. That they did go get a goalie. It's not like all of a sudden if Hellebuck's gone, they don't have a goalie. Mm-hmm. I mean, if they were to get Luukkonen, then Luukkonen and Skinner are their goalies. Yeah.
They could be worse than that. I mean, you could say, well, why did they go get a goaltender then? Especially Skinner, because he likes to play a lot. Hellebuck likes to play most of the games. How's Skinner going to react sitting around playing 15 games or between 15 and 20 games?
Are you with the Bisons at all this week?
I am actually. That's where I'm talking to you about.
You're there now.
Game finished up just as we were speaking. The Bisons had a great opportunity. They loaded the bases on walks and then struck out 3 times in a row in the 8th inning, down 1 run.
Oh, wow.
Couldn't get a sacrifice fly or a bounce out or anything. So it's rare you see that, where a pitcher loads the bases with walks and the relief pitcher comes in and strikes out the side, and you can't get that tying run across the plate. So they did lose by a score of 2-1.
That's not great. We had a 22-0 game last night in the majors.
I didn't see that.
Milwaukee beat Seattle 22-0. The first shutout that large in Major League Baseball since 1900.
Did any position players pitch?
I would hope. I don't know. I just saw Julio Rodriguez not know how many outs there were and throw a fly ball that he caught over the wall.
I didn't realize, I believe it was Pat Malacaro told me, and I don't remember the number. you have to be up by or down by a certain amount of runs
right.
now to put a position player in. Is it 10 maybe?
I don't know, but he's right. You can't just do it anytime you want.
It's a newer rule. It's a rule that you just can't do it. I want to say it's 10, but please don't quote me on that.
No,
it was a while ago that Pat told me that.
It's a Dave Roberts and the Dodgers rule because they got in games. This isn't something we love about how sports has evolved, but it sort of it aligns with data stuff where the Dodgers have these big division leads and they'll get down, not that many runs and just basically throw the game because they don't really need it that badly. They'd rather save their bullpen than win the game.
Right.
And so that's when baseball it might not have just been the Dodgers, but that's when baseball put the rule in, like, all right, you can't do that anytime you want. Like in extra innings, in tie games, the Dodgers were using position players to pitch because, like, all right, well, I just don't want to blow out my bullpen. Mm-hmm. And, we don't want that. That's when they put in the runner on second as well in extra innings too.
I call it the ghost runner.
I never know what to call it because there is somebody standing there.
Ghost runner. When I call a game and I go, our ghost runner is at second base, so it's just my term for it.
It might be the most popular term for it, but I can't do it because there's a guy there. Unlike when we're playing as kids and the ghost runner is not there's nobody there. It's just
nobody there. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's never really zombie runner. Like I've never really found the right phrase for my taste.
So to answer your question, today was my scouting day, and on Saturday I will be doing the game, and Pat and Duke will be on TV.
Very good. Paul, thanks for your time.
Yeah, take care.
Paul Hamilton on the West Shore Hotline. His appearances on WGR brought to you by Raylax Honda. Raylax, we got this. Next hour, Mike Tanier, longtime football scribe, and Daryl Ryder on the Browns. The Bills headed to Cleveland today for a joint practice tomorrow and a preseason game on Saturday. Sal Capaccio still to come. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
For more comfort.
Now's the perfect time to make yourself comfortable with a new electric heating and cooling system from Belknap.
In Western New York, summer and winter bring extreme temperature conditions. Make yourself comfortable with Mitsubishi electric heat pumps, designed to keep your home cool in the summer and warm in the winter, no matter how hot or cold it gets outside. Call Belknap today to learn more.
I'm Gary Garfalo, president of Belknap. We work on your schedule. We don't charge more for weekends and evenings. That's why we say,
give Belknap a ring.
Haven't gotten into it yet, but I want to, and certainly, if not sooner, by Sal joining me at 5:30, I will. Houston, that's a big loss today. Jaden Higgins, their wide receiver 2, is out for the year. And I wonder if it's enough time for them to figure out a move with someone else in the league. But that's a bad loss. Bills and Texans week 1, Jaden Higgins. Probably no Tank Dell yet, and they're scrambling after Nico Collins there. So they were going to play their starters against the Raiders this week. They changed their mind. I think this is maybe why. Mike Tanier next.
On the street last night, said everything's alright. Roller coaster, make it through the day upright. It seems your meal ticket is gone, but life goes on. I could never easily forget how to place your bet. When everyday life gets you down, you gotta steal the crown. Got to own it. Don't bitch and moan about it, please. God forbid you scrape your knees, and it's nothing to sneeze at. Oh, I've told you over and over again. You gotta get.
Travel day for the Buffalo Bills as they'll have their lone joint practice with the Cleveland Browns tomorrow afternoon. Before practice tomorrow, we do expect to hear from Bills head coach Joe Brady, so do stay tuned for that. And then coming up a little bit later on tonight at 5:30, Sal Capaccio will join the show to talk more on what is to come over the next couple of days. Around the league, a tough day for injuries. Chargers center Tyler Biadasz is out indefinitely with damage to his ACL and other injuries in his left knee. Texans wide receiver Jaden Higgins, he is going to miss the rest of the season after suffering a torn ACL yesterday in practice. And then Saints running back Alvin Kamara, he's going to be out at least the next month with a sprained MCL. There was a signing today. Seahawks are bringing in secondary help, bringing in cornerback Trayvon Diggs. Seattle, though, is still reportedly planning on signing Terrion Arnold, even though he is expected to land on the commissioner's exempt list. But at least for today, they bring in just the one cornerback in Trayvon Diggs. To some early afternoon baseball, the Bisons fall to Lehigh Valley 2-1, and the Mets, they just wrapped up their game with the Padres, taking the win 4-2 in that one. Yankees are at Baltimore a little bit later on tonight at 6:35, and then at 6:40, the Jays, they are at Tampa Bay. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
Forbid you scrape your knees, and it's nothing to sneeze at. Oh, I've told you over and over again. You gotta get both hands around it and make your own plans. Roller coaster, it's taking over. It's about time. Oh, it's in your highline on the roller coaster of life. You've got to all choose your timeline.
Pieces and Stems still rocking it. It was more than a team name. I don't know exactly how long ago that was, but it was probably had to be before the days of my having lots of teams, like lots. So it's a username for me and not a team name. All the team names come underneath the umbrella, the largesse of Pieces and Stems. Ironic, isn't it? Because Pieces and Stems are really little in that tiny little can that's like 89 cents. Would Bulldog wrap the Pieces and Stems in foil? Cheap shot. Would he do that? They're already in oil. Maybe they don't need to be in foil. You don't need the F. Sometimes you do in life, but not that time. So you just have the oil already, Pieces and Stems, boom, tiny little can. Just like a toothpick is all you need for those little guys. What? Pieces and Stems. What's such a great name. I have a tough time finding the beans in the store. The signs are usually pretty self-explanatory and they don't really confuse you, but I never see where are the beans? I just never seem to know. There's baking, there's pasta, there's Asian and Mexican, there's crunchy snacks. You have kind of themes I never can find the beans. I don't know. That's a me problem. Almost every time I go to the grocery store, I end up at least once on the app for where is something. And I'll be like right there and I don't see it. And it'll say, you're in 13B. You need to be in 13B and like level 5 or something. I don't understand that. Probably like which shelf it's on. And yeah, I wouldn't be good on a game show where you had to run around the store and find things. Run around the store and fill your shopping cart like a supermarket sweep bonus round situation. The show has never sounded older with the most expensive things in the store. That I could do, I think. That's something we have not spent enough time on in the history of this show, is how you would attack that. 60 or 120 seconds in a grocery store, where are you going? I mean, you're going to the steaks, I think, first. You're going to the ribeye. You're going to the big cuts of meat. But after that, it might get a little bit more nuanced. Anyway, With me now on the West Her Hotline is Mike Tenier. Mike has covered the NFL for a long time. He and Aaron Schatz, a great team over the years too. And I'm always excited to talk to Mike and Aaron, kind of because you can get into some historical context with stuff that you can't do with just anybody. And so, Mike, that's kind of where my head is at as we embark here. Thanks for joining me.
My head is at 120 seconds at a shopping spree in a supermarket.
Where are you?
That's the rules.
Where are you going? What's your plan of attack?
I'm stocking up on detergent and toilet paper and all the expensive home chemicals right away, and I'm cutting out. You're going for the steaks. You do not have, I guess maybe you have a freezer to put those steaks in. You're not going to be able to get to those steaks in time. You're going to load up your freezer and your refrigerator too quickly. I'm going to have my stuff stored in the garage. I will never have to buy detergent again.
I wasn't thinking so much about the consumption side of this, but now that you're talking, I probably should be. I wasn't thinking. I feel like on these game shows, they don't take any of that stuff home. They just sort of, somebody rings them up and this is the most money, and so here you go. You won $10,000 or something. But
well, look at the price of the detergents nowadays.
Yep.
You're going to rack up a lot of money just getting that stuff. $25 for like a big container of it.
You know what else, Mike? Spices.
Yes. Oh yes. No, if that's the deal, go straight to the spices. Go find like the saffron and stuff like that, and just dump the entire thing in your cart and go walking out like a king.
All the Ceylon cinnamon they have are going home with me.
Yes, white pepper, yellow pepper. Go get it.
White pepper, tarragon, saffron. You said that's perfect. All right. Well,
olive oil.
Like I said, I've been sitting here for 24 years. We haven't really done enough on just how to attack a grocery store in this way. Mike, so the Bills historically, I've seen the references to how only the 70s Rams have gone as long as 8 years in a row in the playoffs without a championship. And even they got to one Super Bowl. What are the Bills for you if you think about like the last decade? I mean, they're probably like both a success and a failure, maybe to some extent.
Right. On the historical stage, they're this success. You know, there's the Chiefs and then like everybody else, and the Bills are in there. And maybe you want to put a team like the Eagles who have like, 2 recent Super Bowls ahead of them. But the Bills are in this all-time everything but the ring list. And they may be at the top of that. And when you're living through it, it feels very much like a failure. I'm sure the listeners are nodding along. It doesn't feel great to be there. But then if you look back at it 20 years later, it's like, well, this was a golden era. Look at these guys. Look at Josh Allen. Look at what they accomplished. I don't know what kind of comfort you bring from that, though, when you're in the midst of it.
Yeah, and that's something where, especially as a host in this market, I don't want to try to skip ahead to the end. And what do we say if they don't ever get there? We do have the 90s Bills as some point of reference for that. But so I don't want to do that out loud, but I think maybe everybody does ponder that. Is this actually going to culminate in a championship? Because if it doesn't, it would just seem like such a wasted, not entirely, but sort of a wasted opportunity at least. Because how many teams get gifted with this kind of player and don't win?
And that's it. I'm guessing you have to deal with it day in, day out, week in, week out. You win by 30 points in September and October, and people are calling in or they're listening and they're shrugging. They're shrugging their shoulders. That's expected. That's what we're supposed to do. You lose a game to the Falcons. The sky is absolutely falling. There's nothing you can hang your hat on. It's like, well, we had a parade, so maybe this is an off year and we can bounce back. You don't see all those things that other teams get to point to and say, well, we've been to the top, so we know what it looks like and we can do that again. It's got to be frustrating. And everybody who remembers the 1990s Bills, they reached the Super Bowl. As heartbreaking as it was time and time again, that team, which wasn't really as strong statistically as this team, at least got there year after year after year, and that hope would come in. This team, you hope that we're not talking about them in the past tense at this point. But I understand that the fear you have that you might be doing so.
Yeah, I wonder if you could concoct a trade between those teams and this team, how you would do it.
Wow.
The big difference is I think the biggest difference is the quality of the AFC in the Bills Super Bowl years versus now. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Like you have to trade Patrick Mahomes away or something like that, so it has an easier road along the way. Although you look back then and you had these John Elway led teams, you had a Dan Marino led team in your division at that point. So it was tough back then. If you're going to make some kind of trade, try to get Bruce Smith on this team.
Yeah, no kidding.
Get Bruce Smith on this team, and I think your problems are solved. And that's one of the stories of the last couple of years. It's like, well, who is that elite edge rusher takes it over the top? You're always trying to get that guy as a free agent late in his career, and it never quite works out.
Yeah, that's easier for me than the other way around, like Bruce Smith or Andre, right? Just like,
okay,
yes. This team, a top 5 wide receiver in the league, at number 1, if not number 1, number 2 defensive end, if not defensive player in the NFL, Bruce Smith in his prime. So, yeah, that would work.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that would work, yeah.
It's an interesting moment here, Mike, in the conference because for a couple of years, and we've spoken during that time a few times, how you kind of have, I mean, every division in the conference, the champion repeated 23 to 24. And then in 25, it all got wiped out. It was, Baltimore, Kansas City, Cincinnati all had losing records. So we have kind of an old guard, new guard, so to speak, in the conference now, where you have the teams that we're used to talking, including the Bills, we're used to talking about as like the elites. And now we've got New England and Denver and, I mean, maybe Jacksonville. And I'm not sure that's the whole list. So it's cluttered right now.
It is very cluttered. It was almost like the Ravens, Bills, and Chiefs all pulled into pit row at the same time. The Chiefs were on fire because of injuries, and the other two teams, it's like, well, it was time to change things up. And everyone's pulling out of pit row now with a different story. And the Bills feel like they're the strongest of those 3 teams right now. The Ravens lost so much in free agency. I think it's losing a lot to go from Harbaugh to sort of Harbaugh light in Minter. You can't discount the Chiefs, but again, you're looking at, well, is Patrick Mahomes even healthy for week 1? That's a big question. Are we still doing this thing with Travis Kelce and Chris Jones? The Bills should be the strongest team, but the Bills may have the toughest in-division competitor as well, where you look at that the Patriots. They got significantly stronger, and they reached the Super Bowl. So right away you have like, well, we're in better shape than these other guys, yet we have the biggest questions to ask because we might have the biggest foe that we have to face twice a year.
Right. With Mike Tanier, I'm Mike Schopp. Bulldog is off this week. I want to get back to present day, but now going back to historical, Aaron just did a piece for ESPN on the best by DVOA, a statistic, a metric you're very, very familiar with.
Yes.
All the teams in NFL history that did not make a Super Bowl. And I thought it was interesting that on his ranking, the 23 and 24 Ravens were like both top 4 teams on this list. The Bills, you have to dig a little bit deeper. I want to talk about this somewhat later because it's 2022 when they lose to Cincinnati that comes in at the top of Bills teams on this list. Do you think of it as maybe these metrics would reflect that the Ravens have had more, I don't know, claim or were more sort of, what's the word I want, deserving of a trip to the Super Bowl than the Bills? Or, I mean, the Bills knocked them out a couple times.
Yeah, one of the things with the Ravens is they have the statistical dominance, and then when you look closely at what happened to them, you understand why. When you zoom out, you see it because it's like, well, not just Lamar Jackson, but Derrick Henry a lot of these years, and Kyle Hamilton and all these other stars. And then you zoom into what happened, and last year was kind of a great example. It's like, well, the guy's foot was out of bounds on a touchdown that would have won the game, and then on another game, the ball hit the ground, but like they didn't call it that way, and then the kicker missed the field goal. There's always a Shaggy Dog story about what happened to the Ravens. Oh, it was 4th and 2, and Lamar rolled out, and the receiver dropped the ball. Or there's so many examples like that of what happened to the Ravens. When you start saying things like deserving, I think even a John Harbaugh would flinch at that. It's like, right, if you deserve it, you make the 1 or 2 plays, you don't lose the 1 or 2 plays.
That's
but
right.
The statistics do show, they show that those Ravens teams were special among special. So are those Bills teams. But they make great historical articles in August, and that in 50 cents buys you a newspaper.
Yeah, I didn't want deserving. I was scrambling a little bit because that's
hard.
right. That's sports. I mean, you do have to execute. right? I mean, like
Right.
in the big spots, the Bills have had a couple 13 seconds where like just, okay, well, you have to finish this. And it's not good enough to just talk about how close you were.
Right. It is interesting where it's like, well, the Ravens did this dumb thing in this playoff game. And with the Bills, when you really look at it, it usually is, gosh, what happened in week 6 against the Dolphins? What happened in that one dumb trip over the guy game that meant that they had to play an Arrowhead? That's usually a different question.
Right.
And that's why the Bills were an Arrowhead, and that's why this and that happened. For the Ravens, it's like, well, they were at home, but they did something silly. I guess it's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, that's right. The Bills have been so good, but they've yet to get to that one. And the 1 year for me, Mike, where it's the most maddening is the year where Kansas City won all the games against bad teams by 2 points. And they won all the close games, and big football media just talked about how that meant that they knew how to win, and I just was pulling my hair out. The next year, of course, they forgot because they lost every one of those games last year. But yeah, I mean, the Bills they beat Kansas City, I think, that year. They go to that game in Denver. The last week they don't need it, and everybody sits and they lose to finish 15-2. Their one loss was here. I mean, how about this?
Right.
How about this, by the way, Mike? For historical purposes, can there possibly be another example of a team beating a team like Kansas City 5 years in a row in the regular season, which the Bills have done, but in that span they've gone 0-4, or maybe 1 year further in the back? Like they've lost to them 4 times in the playoffs. I mean, you talk about a meaningless, a worthless kind of statistic. Who beats Kansas City 5 years in a row? These guys, yet.
Right.
Just that's a tough one to swallow.
It's a tough one. I mean, the analog I think of, and I don't have any statistics in front of me, is how many times the Vikings would win an NFC championship game in the 70s against a Cowboys team or a Rams team that had their number in the regular season, but it would go up to Bloomington before they had a dome. It was negative 25 degrees, and then the Vikings won somehow. It's like, yeah, they won somehow. They weren't freezing to death on the field, but that's the closest analog I can come to the kind of thing that happens with the Bills nowadays.
Right. Back at the Met, where both teams were on the same sideline in those years.
Yes.
Somehow.
Yes.
Somehow that happened. Mike Tanier, my guest. I'm Mike Schopp here on WGR. So this year, let's talk about Kansas City for a minute. Mike, should the Chiefs be the team that we fixate on, or whatever that would be? Or should it be New England? I mean, that's in the division. That's always where you start. Or even Baltimore, I suppose. How do you sort of when you look ahead to this Bills season, who are the biggest potential problems?
Yeah, if I'm a Bills fan, I'm fixating on the Patriots with A.J. Brown now and with a year under a belt, and not a lot of reasons. We know the Patriots' schedule was extremely easy last year, and if Aaron was talking to you right now, he'd talk about DVOA and say, so was the Bills' schedule. And the Bills got to play the Jets too. The Bills got to play the Dolphins too, and they tripped over the Dolphins once, and they tripped over the Falcons once. And so you look at the Patriots and say, this is the team that you have to worry about. When I go over to the Chiefs, it's tricky because, first of all, we assume now Patrick Mahomes will be back week 1. So many changes on defense. You wonder if they did what they had to do on defense, or if they lost guys like Trent McDuffie, and that was the veteran secondary that was helping them win one-score games when their offense wasn't chugging along. So, the Chiefs are the vampire that you have to drive the stake through the heart and cut the head off of. They're still out there, but the Bills have not earned the right to look past anyone, particularly in their division, particularly the Patriots.
That's fair, yeah. The Chiefs somehow have managed to become the league's second youngest roster.
Yes.
I don't know how exactly they did that, but now they have that, right. In their favor going forward. So
yeah, it's like Travis Kelce should count as like 2 36-year-olds,
right, yeah,
or something like that. And everyone's class of 2024, 2025, they've drafted exceptionally well, and that's kept them relevant.
You wrote about every team's, but the Bills draft back in the spring at 2 deep zone. And let's talk about sort of Brandon Beane here and what you think of his performance. So he gets the promotion. Sean McDermott gets the door in the offseason. And this draft felt mostly like more of the same. The one big piece that happened around that time was the DJ Moore trade, which,
yes.
I mean, they're going to want to think helps cover for what they haven't done at receiver in the draft. Will they be right?
Well, I think DJ Moore is the big help that you're looking for. If you go out the bigger question, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Brandon Beane's overall performance in the last couple of years. I think that you talk about the Chiefs and how they found meaningful players, even though they're a first-place team in 2024, 2025. You see a lot less of that in recent drafts for the Bills. You know, Keon Coleman has become this sort of wedge issue type of player. So we're talking about this year's draft. They drafted this year as almost like they were drafting depth for 2027, 2028. For that to be true, we need to see Maxwell Hairston out there being an impact player. We need to see Deion Walker, I know, has had a very good camp. I've been reading about that. Out there being an impact player. We need to see Cole Bishop. I know he just came back from an injury. You need to see these guys, and if we can talk about them, Coleman as well, I suppose, we can talk about them, and then we can evaluate saying, oh, well, you know, you waited it was a second-round pick, and you got T.J. Parker, some of these guys. Then we can do that. But if you don't see the dividends from 24 and 25, then we can't really talk about what he did in 2026 because those were supposed to be the backups to those previous guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Skylar Bell is an interesting one. I know it's a fourth-round pick, but I follow plenty of draft guys who were really excited about him at UConn and thought, like, well, that's good value, and we always want wide receivers around here. Here is one. But, man, is there a place for him with Shakir on the team where, like, you have – is there a role? I know he's a rookie still. That's another consideration. But, yeah, you called it in your article square peg receiver, not as a knock on him, but just like sort of how we – the Bills' offense and their personnel and these drafts have kind of been this throughout for me, Mike, because, like, Kincaid was a really cool idea, but you have Knox, and you're going to use Knox, and they want to run the ball then, and that's not going to go away. And so how do you use him? I mean, he's been hurt too. And then Shakir kind of blocks you in a way. And Kincaid and Shakir a little bit overlap because neither's going to play outside, of course. So, or at least Kincaid isn't, at least. So, I don't know. Philosophically, it's been kind of strange.
Philosophically, it's kind of strange. And then you see Jackson Hawes out there blocking his butt off. It's like, well, why can't Knox and Kincaid be on the field at the same time? It's like, well, if you want this big blocker out there, he's going to be one of them. You have these slot guys. Now, you know, Shakir's a proven commodity in the slot. Skylar Bell is a small program slot guy. You know how it is at these smaller programs? If you hide the really good guy in the slot, he's being covered by some linebacker for some small program. And, yeah, he's getting open and he's dusting people. I don't know what Skylar Bell really is. In the short term, and again, I know Keon Coleman now, it looks like something similar to turf toe going on, so there's a question there.
Yep.
You know, Shakir should be in the slot. Coleman, I guess, or Palmer should be like the vertical guy. Moore should be the vertical guy. That should be simple. Is it great? No, it's kind of like Shakir and a couple of question marks, older guys, role players, whatever. It's what you got. It's what Josh Allen is stuck with. So is it going to be two tight ends, James Cook pound the ball? What's it going to look like? We probably know because we saw it last year because the guy who called the plays last year is still calling the plays this year.
Just a couple of minutes here, Mike, if you have it. Zooming out, the Rams are the pretty clear Super Bowl favorite right now. I mean, a little bit of a distance between the Rams, and then it's Buffalo and Baltimore and some of the other usual suspects. Does that line up for you? Like, are the Rams, even without Aaron Donald to this point, maybe bettors are predicting he just walks in the door. Maybe he will. But do you accept the Rams as like sort of the team to beat?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. A lot of times this time of year, it's like, well, pick your Super Bowl winner. And you're stuck either saying, well, it's the Rams or being a contrarian. Like the moment you say someone other than the Rams, it's almost like you have to make this argument. And I'm not making the argument. It's the Rams. You go out in the offseason, you get Myles Garrett and you get Trent McDuffie, and maybe you're getting Aaron Donald, maybe not, but you were already like one or two players away from the Super Bowl and you got those players. It's the Rams. They're the team to beat until proven otherwise. Seahawks, I think, are tough, but it's hard to argue with the just preponderance of top-end talent that they have on their roster right now.
I know a year ago around this time, as a fantasy player, I was distracted by Matthew Stafford being in that truck outside there and some cryogenic thing. Like, was he even going to play? We don't have – is the truck gone? Like there's no talk about his physical status anymore? Like we just sort of completely got rid of that last year because he held up?
I think so. Either we stop talking about the truck, or that's where they hide Puka Nakua and Myles Garrett when they're not practicing. And then I don't want to know if Puka's in there. I do not want to know what's happening in the truck. But I think we've learned. I think we've learned with the Rams. It's like they'll hold you out of practice for any reason whatsoever, including you're just a veteran. Go play video games or, go fishing or whatever, and we'll make a lie up for you. I'm not going to worry about any Rams injury until it's week 1 and I see that their status is in doubt.
Mike, if you choose to, like, where are we finding most of your work now? I mentioned 2 Deep Zone. What else have you got going on?
Yes. Well, 2 Deep Zone is the main place to do it, and you can just Google it, TOO Deep Zone. That's my primary home, and you'll find news, stats, analysis, jokes all around the league, all 32 teams, all the time. Again, it's 2 Deep Zone. Just search for it in your favorite web browser, and it'll pop up.
Or MikeTanier.substack.com as well to subscribe and get everything as well. Very good.
Oh, it's no longer at Substack. It is now at Ghost. That's why I was being a little weird about that. And because it's at Ghost, it's got like extra stuff that I don't feel like saying on the radio.
Okay.
TOO, Deep Zone. You will find me. Promise. You can follow me on Blue Sky as well, at Mike Tanier, Tanier.
I went and asked you and you answered, and I went and changed your answer, which was very rude of me. Very good. Mike, it's always a treat. Thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure. Take care and enjoy the preseason.
Oh, who wouldn't? Mike Tanier with us on the Western Hotline here on WGR. Next, Daryl Ryder on the Browns, as the Bills are off to see the Browns this week. That'll be after the update. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
Travel day for the Buffalo Bills. They'll have their lone joint practice with the Cleveland Browns tomorrow afternoon in Cleveland. Before practice, we do expect to hear from Bills head coach Joe Brady, so do stay tuned for that. And at least on the Bills side of things, do stay tuned as well, as coming up at 5:30, Sal Capaccio will join the show as we'll get the latest on what to expect over the next few days. Around the league, it's been a tough day injury-wise. Charger center Tyler Biadasz is out indefinitely with damage to his ACL and other injuries in his left knee. Texans wide receiver Jaden Higgins is going to miss the remainder of the season after suffering a torn ACL in practice yesterday. And then Saints running back Alvin Kamara is going to be out at least the next month with a sprained MCL. Over in baseball, Bisons had some early afternoon action. They do fall, though, to Lehigh Valley 2-1. The Mets took down the Padres 4-2. And then coming up later tonight, Yankees are at Baltimore at 6:35. And at 6:40, the Blue Jays, they are at Tampa Bay. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
Well, we both talked about that if we see out of our ones, our older players, what we want to see on Thursday, they would not play in the game. We agreed upon that. Plan is that we'll play our ones a significant amount against each other on Thursday in a controlled environment. Not that the other guys aren't going to get reps, but in a controlled environment and see where we're at.
That is the new Cleveland Browns coach, Todd Monken. I think controlled is an interesting word because some of these joint practices seem to, well, maybe they lose control. And I think that's probably one thing on Monken and also Joe Brady's mind going into this thing tomorrow. Let's visit with Daryl Ryder from 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland as the Bills are on their way, if they're not there already. Daryl, are you ready for a joint practice?
I have never been more ready to see another football team than I am for tomorrow when the Bills get here.
What about the idea that there's a line that sometimes gets crossed, right? Everybody's excited to, not just you or me, but everybody's excited to see, the so-called different colored uniforms. How important is it, in your mind, to Monken and the Browns that it sort of stay, so to speak, between the lines?
Yeah, I think it's important. Todd Monken is a no-nonsense coach, that's for sure. He's already ended 2 practices in training camp. In fact, Tuesday's practice was a direct result of his displeasure with defensive players being too aggressive. One, a hit on Quinshawn Judkins. Judkins did not practice today, minor injury as a result of that. And then getting too close to the quarterback. And Monken let defensive coordinator Mike Rutenberg hear about it. And then he let his team hear about it after practice. So he's not looking to turn this into a brawl tomorrow. He wants both the Bills and the Browns to get quality work in against each other. As he put it, today it's going to be a measuring stick for the Browns so they can see how they stack up with an elite team in the NFL, because the Browns are the furthest thing from an elite team in the NFL. So he definitely wants the attention and the focus to be on what takes place between the lines and not any extracurricular activities.
Daryl, beyond just tomorrow and even the preseason, what are your vibes when it comes to Monken? A lot of times coaches get hired because they're, to some degree, the opposite of the last guy. And I think maybe personality-wise, from the outside, I would say that they check that box here in Cleveland. Maybe that puts it mildly. What kind of feelings do you have about him?
Yeah, he is the antithesis of Kevin Stefanski. You ask him a question, he gives you an answer. You may not like the answer, but he's going to give you an answer. He's not worried about being politically correct or, worried about being close to the vest. Really, the only questions he tends to shy away from are directly related to player injuries. But outside of that, you ask him a question, he gives you an answer. You might not like the answer, but that's just how he feels. And he's not faking it. He's not trying to put on a show. He's not trying to fake, being coy and things like that. I think under the circumstances, I've been really impressed with what he has done. It looks like a professional outfit. It operates like a professional outfit. We'll find out if it actually can play like a professional outfit. I have my doubts, but that more has to do with the quarterback than that's going to be available to him than the head coach. But I was very skeptical when they hired Todd Monken, and I have acknowledged locally that just how impressed I have been and how my feelings on that whole situation have done a complete 180. And so he might be exactly what the doctor ordered for this young football team, and especially a young football team that's going to struggle from the quarterback position all season.
With Daryl Reiter, well, you said a lot right there. What should be the plan? What do you think is the plan at that position? Is it Watson, period, or Sanders? Like, what do you think they should want to do?
Well, they should start Shedeur Sanders, but they're not going to. They're going to start Deshaun Watson. I'm convinced of that. That decision has not been made. I want to be very clear about that. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But my gut has a very good batting average, so I'm going to stick with that. As long as he's healthy and available, Deshaun Watson will be the week 1 starter. And also, too, I think they'll just be more comfortable buying some extra time for Shedeur Sanders to continue to develop and kind of get his act together, so to speak, to be ready to be an NFL starter. Because quite frankly, Shedeur Sanders is not ready to be an NFL starter. Now, I know his fans don't want to hear that across the country. They are a special breed of fans, I will say that. You can praise the kid for 59 minutes and 50 seconds, but it's the 10 seconds of criticism that you have them. They remember, and you're a hater, and you're a racist, and all these other things. But they should start Shedeur Sanders. There's more upside to him. If this is a young football team, it's about growth. I just don't see any upside in starting Deshaun Watson. But this is Todd Monken's first job as an NFL head coach. He had to wait until he was 60 years old to get it. And so I think he's going to go with the veteran. The operation before the snap is better with Deshaun Watson, but I would say the operation after the snap is better with Shedeur Sanders. So, it's for my position, a no-win situation for the Cleveland Browns right now.
Daryl, is it as simple as that Watson has suffered so much physical damage, even since he's been to Cleveland? I mean, that was, of course, such a controversial move in the first place. Is it deeper, or is it deeper than that, where psychologically maybe you would say that he couldn't get it back after what happened in his personal life and in Houston? I don't know. To me, it could be both, and maybe that's the end of it. But I think, physically, he's the shoulder and then the Achilles injuries. I don't know. Maybe there's just no hope there.
I think it's a physical problem. I think he's had plenty of time to deal with the off-the-field issues. He's spent, obviously, a lot of time the last 2 years rehabbing injuries, first the shoulder, then Achilles tear number 1, followed by Achilles tear number 2. From my standpoint, I just don't think he can physically do it anymore. It's just how I feel about it, and it's why I'm against the Browns even putting him on the football field, because I don't see the benefit. He's a sunk cost. Mm-hmm. This is the last year you have to pay him. He'll be on your salary cap books for the 27 and 28 seasons after they waive him with a post-June 1 designation next March, so they can split his remaining cap charge over 2 years. But yeah, I don't see any upside for the Browns in starting Deshaun Watson, and it's because there, I believe, are physical limitations. This is not a situation where I think he's mentally challenged. I don't think, or drained, I should say. I don't think this is a situation where he lacks the effort or the desire or anything like that. I have repeatedly said I give him all the credit in the world. He could have pocketed the full 230 and stayed away. He forced the Browns to open the 21-day practice window during the end of last season, just so he could get back on the practice field and get some work. That's commendable. And then obviously he's worked really hard to put him in a position where he could go through this quarterback competition, which I do think he's going to win, and go ahead and start week 1 for the Browns in Jacksonville on September 13th.
You have, and your colleagues together, just a very qualified, interesting inside perspective on what this last few years has been. When Watson was traded to Cleveland, my co-host at the time said, I think I'd have to quit this job if that happened here. Like, he just did not want to ever have to talk about it. And it might get, I'm asking, Daryl, like it might have become really twisted because deep down we all want the home team to win. I mean, we don't always want to admit it, but we do. And now you've got a player that's so controversial. And I mean, do you want to root for him? Do you want to root against him? And you're taking the fans along on a trip when it comes to this. And I mean, I don't know. I have never, well, to put it simply, envied your position on this subject in Cleveland, because I don't know how I would want to deal with it either. You don't have to admit it or tell me, but you might just kind of want it to be over.
Well, I'll say this, there is a lot more to that whole situation and the accusations and the lawsuits and whatnot that has been discussed in the public sphere. And quite frankly, you can't discuss it in the public sphere. And I'm just going to leave that part of it there. That doesn't excuse the accusations or the alleged behavior by any stretch of the imagination. But again, I just feel like there is, based on things that I have been told from various sources, there is more to the story than just what has been put out there. I will say there's this very specific reason why when the NFL pursued their investigation and concluded their investigation, they only included four women in those as far as the accusations, right? That's why he served the 11-game suspension. It wasn't because of the 26 or 27, I forget the specific number. It was because of the four women and the incidents related to those women that the NFL investigated. But look, I mean, he's played 19 games since this all went down. He's not been good in the 19 games on the field that he has played. He's not looked good in practice. He's not looked good in the games. So, yeah, I mean, there is no juice worth the squeeze there with him at this point. And that's part of the reason I will acknowledge I favor just starting Shedeur. Do I think Shedeur Sanders is ready to be an NFL quarterback? No, I think he has the potential to be. There's a lot of upside with the kid. There's a lot to like in his game, but he's not ready. I mean, he messed up a last end of game situation today in practice, getting everyone set so he could spike the football properly. He messed that up. So there's a lot of work that Shedeur needs to do, but I just rather watch that than watch a guy who's been through the injuries that he's been through, that, struggles throwing the ball down the field with accuracy. I see more non-competitive throws in practice from Deshaun Watson than I do Shedeur Sanders, as far as being so far off target and things like that. So it's not a matter of whether or not I want this whole situation to be over with. It's just a matter of looking at the big picture of where the Browns are at in their roster building process and where they are as a team and an organization. And I just think that there's more to gain by playing Shedeur Sanders rather than playing Deshaun Watson. But again, I understand why I feel like Todd Monken is going to go with Deshaun, because he's the veteran. He has the experience. He can do the pre-snap stuff that's required. And then when the thing falls apart, well, you can always turn it over to Shedeur rather than, okay, you put Shedeur out there before he's ready to go. And then all of a sudden, well, you find out the kid really can't do this thing. You've got to save him from himself. And now you send Deshaun in to be the mop and bucket. And that doesn't make a lot of sense either. So that's kind of where I am at as far as this whole situation goes, and where I do believe the Browns are as well.
Thank you, Daryl. The last time Watson played was October of 24. Then the next week, it seems like so long ago, but it's Jameis Winston who starts, and they upset Baltimore that year. It's kind of a big win. Yeah. And then Watson has not been seen since until apparently coming up here soon, week one, as soon as week one. Quickly, last thing, how good is the Browns defense likely to be? I
think they're going to be pretty good. We're going to find out tomorrow, though, okay? Because they look like a top defense going against this Browns offense. I actually said in my recap video today, we're going to find out just how bad this Browns offense really is, because the defense every day makes plays. They've had over 20 interceptions. This is a secondary that in the last couple of years doesn't catch the football. They haven't caught the football, haven't created the turnovers. They're doing it in training camp this year. So I'm guessing that's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because the quarterbacks are turning the ball over. So I am very curious to see how good they really are. I think Denzel Ward remains one of the top cornerbacks in the game. Jared Verse, that was brilliant by Andrew Berry and the Browns to get him. He's as good as advertised. He's not Myles Garrett. Nobody is. But if substitutes go, he's going to get after the quarterback and apply pressure. I really like what I've seen from the Browns defensive front. But again, is that because the Browns offensive line isn't playing well, or are they that good? Tomorrow it's going to be the real deal because they're going to go against that Bills offensive line. They're going to go against Josh Allen and those receivers and that potent offense. And we're going to find out real fast. Are they for real, or are they good because they play against their offense every day?
These practices are interesting, more interesting than the games tend to be. Enjoy it, Daryl. Thanks as always for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Daryl Ryder, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. Sal's on his way if he's not there already, and I'll ring him. Anybody say that anymore? No, getting head shakes all around me. 5:30 for Sal today. I'm Mike Schopp. No Bulldog until Monday. This is WGR. for WGR, that's 4947, wins a $50 gift card to Connor's Restaurant, Seneca Street in West Seneca, here on Beef on Weck Wednesday. Every Wednesday, score 4 Connor's Beef on Weck meals for just $55 or 1 for $15 because Connor's is better. Boom. Good luck. Man, I have no time here. I always feel a little bit bad for the Cleveland guys that come on. I mean, really, I don't know. It's more just sort of an inside baseball kind of thing for myself, for Bulldog, for talk show hosts. Like, geez, I only ever want to go so far defending our boys. But, man, in Cleveland, that has to have been complicated, if not downright unpleasant. More after sports on WGR. So I wanted to tell you the 5 teams in the NFL I think are the worst. Like, this is not the reverse AFC power rankings, and this is not even like not entirely specific to the current roster. But the Giants are definitely one of the 5. The Giants have not been good in so long. They had a fluke year like the Bills had in 2017 where they weren't good at all, but they made the playoffs. They even won a game in that year, winning in Minnesota, but then they got crushed and they were exposed. Like, that's Brian Daboll, Coach of the Year. Great job. I mean, just, it's like the PDO Jack Adams winners in hockey. Great, great. But it's not really that good. So the Giants when was the last time the Giants, even actually, I don't want to try this hard, but even the Super Bowl teams with Eli Manning were like, they tended to be okay teams that got rolling in the playoffs, perfect timing. Those were not dominant teams. Like, the Giants have had a couple of those over the years. Giants are on the list. No particular order here. The Arizona Cardinals have to be on the list. Like, the top 5 donkey teams in the league. Arizona. What are they doing? I mean, it's another new coach. The quarterback situation is what exactly? Jacoby Brissett, or maybe it'll be Carson Beck. They drafted Carson Beck, but I don't know how good he's actually supposed to be. Arizona, plus their history, Arizona for sure. Giants, Cardinals. The Jets can't be left off a list like this. I mean, this again is a point about how much fun the Bills have been, even though they haven't beaten Kansas City in the playoffs. You know, even though they haven't made it, it's still been mostly really exciting and fun and good. The Giants, the Cardinals, the Jets might be the worst of all of them. They're never good. It's the longest playoff drought in the league. 2010 or 2011, one of those, is the last time they were in the playoffs. Last year they were in the playoffs. It's always kind of embarrassing, too, with the Jets. The owners' grades before the league was able to strong-arm their way into keeping those private, which, you know, thanks. And his kids using Madden ratings to help on personnel decisions. I mean, come on. The Giants and the Jets take pride in this. The Giants and the Jets, New York, quote, New York teams, for many years, I would say, are 2 of the 5 most embarrassing NFL teams, if that's not too strong. Giants, Cardinals, Jets. Now I need 2 more. And it's a little bit tougher. I feel like there's a tier break here because those 3, I think, cannot be left off. I'm going Carolina, a defending division champion, but I'm going with Carolina because, right? In this game on Saturday, Bryce Young, first overall pick, that's going nowhere. The coach is kind of cool for what he's been able to do, Baker Mayfield and back in Seattle. Geno Smith in Seattle. Like, he seems maybe capable, but I think I'm staying on the spot that Carolina is in really bad shape for this year. And I think Young might be the worst starting quarterback in the league. They're going to try with Jonathan Brooks. We just had Carolina. I'm not going to go deep on them, but to me, they make the list. Then I need one more. And part of how I started thinking about this was that the Bills are going to Cleveland. And poor Cleveland. I'm going with Miami, though. Miami's the number 5 team on this list of 5 teams. I'm not saying Cleveland. I think Cleveland has been, I know, don't laugh. I think Cleveland has been largely unlucky. I think it was an ownership-driven decision, mandate, with what happened with Watson. And that, that the Bills suffered from some of that over many years. But it's not quite the same to me as when you're just kind of always bad and it sort of makes sense that you're bad. To me, the Browns might have to be the honorable mention on a list like this, but I just don't want to give them.
Travel day for the Bills as they'll have their lone joint practice with the Cleveland Browns tomorrow in Cleveland. And before that practice, we do expect to hear from Bills head coach Joe Brady. And for a little bit more on the next couple of days, do stay tuned. Sal Capaccio will join the show a little bit later on this hour at 5:30 to give us an update on what is to come. Around the league, a tough day injury-wise. We got an update on Charger center Tyler Biadasz. He is out indefinitely with damage to his ACL and other injuries to his left knee. Texans wide receiver Jaden Higgins is going to miss the remainder of the season after suffering a torn ACL at practice yesterday. And Saints running back Alvin Kamara is going to be out at least the next month with a sprained MCL. There was also a signing today as the Seahawks are bringing in cornerback Trayvon Diggs, although even with this move, Seattle is still reportedly planning to sign cornerback Terrion Arnold, though he is expected to land on the commissioner's exempt list. And then in baseball, some early afternoon action. The Bisons, they fall to Lehigh Valley 2-1, while the Mets pick up a 4-2 win over the Padres. Coming up a little bit later tonight, Yankees, they're at Baltimore. That one's at 6:35, and at 6:40, the Blue Jays, they are at Tampa Bay. It's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
It's Mike Schopp.
We were having a very serious conversation about mayonnaise here.
And the Bulldog.
And don't even talk to me about weed.
On WGR, Sports Radio 550.
Anybody right now sitting around, driving around with a Keon Coleman take they want to rip off? So here's why I ask. Not that we couldn't ever ask a question like that. I mean, it's one of our big topics with the Bills is Keon Coleman, right? I mean, I was going to say a lot rides on him, and that's another question I need to ask myself. Like, how much really rides on Keon Coleman? The Texans, who the Bills play in the opener, lost their presumed wide receiver 2 to a torn ACL, out for the year. And a couple things on that. The player is Jaden Higgins. They have Nico Collins, who's a star. He got hurt against the Bills. I guess that would have been 2 years ago. On a long touchdown pass, and then he was like gone for more than a month. But, if he stays on the field like anybody, he's close to elite. After that, Tank Dell, everybody liked him, injured, presumed not ready for week 1. Now you've lost Higgins for the year already, and after that, you're really scrambling. Coleman, a friend of mine, tweeted to me and maybe others that the Bills should try to trade Keon Coleman to Houston. And I would never do that. I don't want to give him away on a team where I'm not still really sure what I've got at wide receiver. He's 23, and I'm playing them in week 1. I'm not giving them anybody. People have made the connection with New England and Houston. The Houston GM was with New England. And by the way, as I pointed out on Twitter, those teams do not play each other this year. If the Patriots want to trade Kayshon Boutte because they don't have a spot for him, then maybe the opener is still almost a month away. where Houston could get someone in and acclimate him and get by. If not for the whole season, at least week one. I mean, Jaden Higgins hasn't really done anything in the NFL yet. It's not like they lost Collins. But, yeah, they could be, upon this news, they could be looking for somebody to bring in. I wouldn't accommodate them. I don't need a fifth-round pick or any pick. Well, they're not going to offer me a first, right? I don't need a draft pick right now. What I need is to win a championship. And I am still leaving the door cracked open for Coleman. I know he's in a walking boot, and I know everything, or at least what we all know about his experiences here the last couple of years. But I don't want to dump it. Do you? Do you think there's any value in that? Like, do you think you would be at a point, are you at a point where you would basically trade Keon Coleman for a draft pick for next year? I don't think I'd want to trade anybody for a draft pick for next year, unless it's mind-blowing, unless it's somebody, where I'm getting a 1 and I just can't say no. But even that, imagine such a trade. If the Bills were to send, it would have to be a starter for anybody that would get you a high draft pick, even round 2, I would think. Are they so deep anywhere where they could afford that? I wouldn't. If I'm Brandon Beane, I wouldn't do it for any reason. I mean, the optics of trading a player in this moment for a draft pick to me would just be a deal breaker. No, you're not going to catch me playing for futures with this roster. I got to win. Now, one part of that is, and this is subjective, you might disagree with this, are they so deep anywhere where they could actually do something that would help the overall? And I just don't think so. I don't think they're unique in that. I don't think the Bills are that different or that special in the AFC for being, fragile. Can I use that word? Can I use the F word? Shouldn't I know, after all these years, if I can use the F word? Are they fragile? So if Josh Allen goes down, it's over. If Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, it's over. That's maybe Trevor Lawrence. Who else? Maybe Drake May. Maybe Herbert. I don't want to say C.J. Stroud. I don't want to say Bo Nix, but I don't know. I think with a lot of teams, Dak Prescott, maybe Jalen Hurts, although I'm not as sure about Jalen Hurts. Who else? Stafford? Yes. Want to say Darnold? I don't know if I do. I don't need to run the whole league down. Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit, maybe all those teams. Maybe it's almost half the league where the starting quarterback goes down. You can send the check. Now, thinking of that Houston point, maybe it's the time of year where any of those teams, if the worst case scenario were to happen, and let's just hope that we're not talking about this at any point starting tomorrow when you're going to walk into Cleveland and, play pretty serious practice with the Browns. Maybe there's somebody that you would try to get to save your season. But really, after Allen, whose injury would really be a problem for these Bills? Is there anybody where you would say they're dead? I would never say that about Cook. No offense to Cook, because running backs get replaced all the time and sometimes do just as well or even better. I would think I don't want to go there with Dawkins. I don't even really like having this conversation, with myself, because it's sort of a little bit dark, presuming injuries. But it also is the kind of thing that a GM would have to have answered to himself already. What do we do? What's plan B if anybody goes out? I don't think there's another skill position player on the Bills where I think they'd really be dead. I mean, DJ Moore is interesting. What's happened, I'm in the fantasy streets, right? And what's happened with DJ Moore on the heels of Saturday's game is every time I turn on a podcast or host one like last night, everybody seems just sort of more open to DJ Moore being good, to, stat-wise for the Bills what matters to those guys is like, can I get 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns out of DJ Moore or 100 catches, things like that? Like, I think Saturday did something, which to me is a little bit weird because it was one half, if not one quarter of a preseason game. How about you? 803-0550. I would not have any interest in dumping Coleman. I mean, if he is, and I doubt this is true, but if he is some sort of a problem internally and they feel like, and this happens sometimes, they got to get him out of here because you don't know what's going on, it's this bad, then, that's not something I'm privy to, and I guess that does happen. But I want to keep going to see if I can get, what is it? I mean, I'm never going to get, probably, I mean, I shouldn't say never, I doubt I'm ever going to get that DJ Moore hypothetical season I just mentioned from Keon Coleman. But what I could get is touchdowns. And honestly, and I like this little stat, no player on the Bills over the last 2 seasons has caught more touchdown passes than Keon Coleman. 8. So there's like a red zone value to him. And I think maybe as he gets older, I can stretch that out into something more. So I don't want to give him up for nothing. But I'm also not expecting the world, just sort of, I can't be giving up, maybe this is just obvious, I can't be giving up players for future assets right now. And that puts Bean in a little bit of a spot. We talked to Mike Tanier earlier, and he's like, basically, I've never been a fan of, to an extent, of Bean's performance. He has not, I mean, this is what it is. He has not been in a situation where he can really rebuild, like, at all. It's not even rebuilding. They call it what? Retooling, or whatever word might be even behind that in really what you're doing. I mean, you're not trading your best players like you would see in hockey or something when your team is bad and you've got stars on big salary. Like, you just get everybody out of here. Football teams almost never do that. But he hasn't been, his Bills have always been on the cusp. I mean, always. So he's never been in a position to trade for futures. I guess, he did it with Diggs after he traded futures for Diggs in the first place. He got to a point, I'm talking about Coleman a little bit like this hypothetically, he got to a point with Diggs, the Bills did, I think Allen is probably driving this, I think he drives almost everything they do, where they just felt like it was untenable and let's take our chances. Everybody eats, right? We can't have this guy around anymore. But apart from specific off the field personality conflicts, what Diggs is famous for, there really is there's been no opportunity, no impulse to rebuild or retool the Bills because obviously they've been at or near the top of the division the whole time. So I wouldn't, that's just a certain facet of Bean's tenure or legacy with the Bills is like a lot of what maybe a GM can get fat on, so to speak, in this way is if they start with a rebuilding project. And, he did come in before they got good, and that meant Watkins and what, was that Darius even? I guess that goes back that far. But really, ever since Allen got pretty, and they just have never had any sort of inclination, rightly, to be like that. Lines open for your feedback on this. Let's talk to Lucas here. Hi, Lucas.
Hey, good morning. Or not good morning, but how you doing?
Hi.
So I think what you're saying about Keon here, I'm just thinking about, in terms of his expectations, what I'd be happy with. And I think if DJ Moore can come in and be your team's certified number one primary wide receiving pass catching option, if you could slot Keon into the third tier, if he's the tertiary option for the wide receivers, and he could produce on the level of a Gabe Davis when we had Diggs and we had Isaiah McKenzie and Cole Beasley. If he could produce to what a Gabe Davis could produce in that role, I think I would personally be happy with that. I don't think you need him to be 1,000 yard a year guy, even though you took him in the second round. So that's just my take on it. Thanks.
Yeah. No, I mean, you don't need to set the loftiest expectations for him to call it a win, I guess, for him to meet whatever 1,000 yards or whatever it might be. I don't think we're really there anymore, if we ever were there. What you want, though, is a useful asset, whatever that means on a stat line. And I would dare to suggest that Coleman hasn't been, useless so far in 2 years. Last year he played in 13 games. He started 6. He was benched, but he did give them 4 touchdown catches. The leader on the team had 5. Dalton Kincaid had 5. Nobody else had that many. Shakir 4, Knox 4, Coleman 4. 4 is not 14, but it's about the best that anybody did in that statistic. And the year before is the same thing. What Bills player had 5 touchdown catches in 2024 to lead the team? Mac Hollins. Remember him? And then it's 4 from Coleman and 4 from Shakir. Like there is it a need per se? There is a role or maybe a little bit of a void, you could say, that he can help fill. They have not had the touchdown guy. I mean, Davis in his day, the first stint with Davis, Diggs, of course. But that's really what I would love for them, is if somehow this goes through Joe Brady, if somehow they had, whether it's Coleman or someone else, like an easy button, as they say, in the red zone, where it isn't Allen running over people and it isn't James Cook. Or it could be a little swing pass or something to James Cook, but, defenses tend to be prepared for that. Like, just if there's a player, a contested catch player that wins in the end zone, not everybody's Davante Adams, but Davante Adams is, to me, the picture in the dictionary for this, where no matter, he's going to be double teamed. He's Davante Adams, but it doesn't matter. He's essentially the Rams goal line back. And Stafford is good enough, and maybe Allen is this good, right? We want to think so, that you can get easy-ish touchdowns from a receiver, like from what the Rams get with Adams. And not thinking that Coleman can be Adams, but something like that would be that would be my project as the Bills when it comes to Coleman, is to figure out how to get him. Is it impossible? Separation, there's good size. Is it impossible to think that Keon could be like that kind of player? Maybe it is. It's lofty. I'm not shooting for 1,000 yards. I'm shooting for a decent producer that isn't just a dead asset on my roster. And I think the Bills, listen to this. I think the Bills at wide receiver have room for that. Don't you? I think they do. Now, it won't be in Cleveland, I guess, because he was on in a walking boot yesterday. So I doubt we see him at all this week with whatever sprained toe/foot means, but it doesn't sound like he's fine. Remember Ryan Paganetti, who came on with me a while ago? He was in the Eagles booth, the analytics guy who he's not working in the league this year, but he's building this really impressive portfolio on social media, and he's doing lots of interviews. It's a lot of fantasy, but it's also not, talking about his experience and just like stuff that teams still get wrong. That's not where I'm going here, but I saw something from him today that I thought was interesting. So Sal and I talked yesterday about this joint practice versus the game with the Browns. And we like the joint practice because we can control the situations and we don't have to be as violent necessarily, unlike a real game. So certain obvious ways that coaches work together and the joint practice kind of fits with what their needs are. Ryan Paganetti said, he just put out that, like, if you put these practices on TV, how well would they do? Couldn't Eagles and Patriots today, A.J. Brown against his old team in a controlled, presumably, practice. If you put that on TV tonight, live, how well would it do? How well would it draw? Ryan basically suggested that it would beat maybe almost any playoff game in any other sport for ratings. Put an Eagles-Patriots joint practice up against the Stanley Cup playoffs. Which gets more eyeballs? I mean, to me, that's A, believable, and B, very sad, depressing, because it really shouldn't be like that. Doesn't football have enough of a stranglehold on our sports culture that we can just maybe put a limit on how much more needs to be visible, how much more needs to be shown? Like, and that's not against his point. I'm not saying that he shouldn't have said that. I'm just saying, like, if the Bills-Browns practice tomorrow were on TV, I'd feel an obligation to watch it. I'd feel some, like a professional one, I'd feel some, interest in it. I have that already. So if it's available to watch it, some of me would want to do it. But I also just, I don't need more football, like I have taken the ride with this sport, and most of you, maybe, a lot of you have done it earlier for longer than I have, and just with less of a guilty conscience, maybe. But I don't want joint preseason practices to outrate playoff games in the NHL or in baseball. I'd rather it not do that. So do we get to a point where these are televised? When has football ever said no to money? And if they thought they could make money on it, and maybe they just haven't realized yet. Now, more teams, I think, are doing it than before. This idea that it, in a way, replaces the preseason game for competitiveness or strategy, or really what the teams need from each other, well, what does that tell you about the merits of the preseason game? Of all things that might seem incredible about sports in bygone eras, the fact that there were 6 preseason games in the NFL 50 years ago, that's color TV. That's not Red Grange. The fact that these teams played 6 preseason games before a 14-game regular season schedule, to me, like, a part of me wants to go back in time and just listen to or read a conversation about how that happened and whether or not anybody thought to question it. Like 6 preseason games, and the starters played them all throughout. It wasn't about resting guys and keeping them away from injury. It was about getting in shape and getting ready for our season. So can you imagine 6? I grew up with 4, and it was a pretty long time ago when 4 seemed too many. Then we got to 3, but only because we had to have the extra regular season game, and I'm pretty sure we're going to do that again, go to 2 preseason games and 18 regular season games, and probably more of these joint practices. They're fine. I feel like the Browns, and Sal's going to join me in about 10 minutes from Cleveland, I feel like the Browns are a little bit of a beehive for the Bills to walk into. This is not if I could pick, this is not a team I'd want to hang out with right now and practice with. I don't know if I trust the Browns for this. I think I'd rather have this with a good team that doesn't have a new coach trying to instill all the new culture stuff and attitude and toughness and all those football things to a franchise that has been, desolation, Cleveland. That's a little bit unsettling to me. Like, who's to say, I guess this could happen anywhere. It could happen to a team playing against the Bills. You run into Caleb, you look at Caleb Elarm's oar the wrong way, he might just pile drive you. But really, Cleveland seems ripe for a scene where, they're trying to win jobs, they're trying to win respect. If you're not expected to win, does a coach like you for that extra effort type stuff, even if he doesn't think you're that talented, because you're what he's trying to impart? Again, it's a pretty broad brush, because I'm not saying that means you'll get hurt playing against that guy. But there's a little bit of that with me. I think there's already a natural feeling of this is going to be more intense. Everybody says that when you go practice against another team in these situations. Everybody says there's an intensity jump because, you're not hitting your own guys, and teams are very strict about what they want you to be able to do against your own teammate. And you see these fights happen at training camp, and aren't they often because somebody thinks somebody else went too far? That's not what it's going to be when it's the Bills and the Browns. It's not about, unless it's from a coaching perspective, it's not going to be that you went too far. He's like, hey, that's my guy. And then it's just on. I think they're all going to try to avoid that in Cleveland. But, yeah, it's just a team that, I don't know, I just feel a little bit, not nervous, but a little anxious maybe, that you're walking into a place where guys are going to have not that much to lose and a lot to prove maybe. See what Sal thinks next. He and I talked about that for a minute yesterday. From Cleveland, Sal Capaccio after the update. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
for the Buffalo Bills. They'll have their lone joint practice tomorrow with the Browns over in Cleveland. Before practice, we do expect to hear from Bills head coach Joe Brady. And stay tuned, coming up next, Sal Capaccio will join the show. He's on his way to Cleveland, and we'll get the latest on what to expect for the next couple of days. Around the league, it's been a tough day injury-wise. We got an update on Charter Center Tyler Biadasz. He is out indefinitely with damage to his ACL and other injuries in his left knee. Texans wide receiver Jaden Higgins, he is going to miss the year after suffering a torn ACL yesterday. And then Saints running back Alvin Kamara going to be out at least the next month with a sprained MCL. Then over in baseball, we had some early afternoon action. The Bisons fall to Lehigh Valley 2-1, while the Mets, they held on to pick up a 4-2 win over the Padres. Coming up later tonight, Yankees are at Baltimore, 6:35, and then at 6:40, the Jays, they are at Tampa Bay. It's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet with you for the extra mile since 1935. I'm Zach Jones for Western New York's Voice of the Fan, WGR.
Sal was out in Cooperstown, Oneonta, that area for Little League Baseball that week. Got home, right to the stadium, preseason opener. Quick breath of fresh air, and then now Cleveland for a joint practice and then a preseason game on Saturday with the Browns. How do you like Cleveland, Sal?
I love it. It's a great city. Been there a couple of times. Been there several times now, but we've actually gone there a couple times just to go as a family to kind of hang out down by the river, and they've done a great job by the waterfront there, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the baseball field, the football stadium, everything's right there. I've seen the Yankees play there a couple times, so it's been really nice, and I think they've done a really great job with that district down there.
Pretty easy to get around, and there's lots to do, especially for a sports fan. Have you been to see the Cavaliers?
I have not. I think baseball and football, but I have not done basketball there yet.
Also right down there, next to the stadium. I went to see game 3 of the finals with Golden State, my one ever NBA game in Cleveland, and I feel like I cannot do another one because it was just so good. So we'll have fun there. We talked about this practice tomorrow when we spoke yesterday. And I don't know, I'll put it a different way, but not that different. I feel like the Bills might be walking into a little bit of a hornet's nest with the Browns. You know, you have a new coach. There's something about a team, Sal, where it's been decades of this for Cleveland, where the next coach in does the things we talk about all the time when they're new, like try to establish new standards and everything like that. And I doubt this Todd Monken wants physical altercations. This is a group effort with the Bills, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if it got pretty feisty.
No, me neither. And as I said yesterday, I've been a part of these a few times with the Bills. Carolina, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, coming to Buffalo. And I don't remember any time where it's gotten really out of hand. There's always been a couple skirmishes here or there, but then you look around the league and it happens. There's kind of no way to predict it. You have to have two coaches and organizations that send the message and set the tone and try to do whatever they can to make sure that doesn't happen. But you also never know. Maybe the message is let's go be as physical as possible, and you're trying to win jobs and compete and all those kinds of things. And we know that, the Browns are a team that has not done a lot of winning, and people are trying to, fight for jobs and show that they can be part of that, turning it around, so to speak. The Bills are also in that same boat with players on their team who are trying to win jobs for a new coach, by the way, a new defensive coordinator, by the way, who said yesterday at the practice, Jim Leonard said physicality. That's the number one thing he's looking for. So there's no doubt about that, but you just hope that people treat it right and they get accomplished what they, go there to get accomplished.
Maybe to try to expound upon that, what are the Bills' top few priorities for this tomorrow, either side of the ball? I mean, talking about defense there, but if indeed the two head coaches sit down tonight, or have they already, and try to, coordinate, well, what do we both need to work on? What helps us? What might Brady mention?
probably going against different defense that they've gone, and I have to go and look exactly what kind of defense they run specifically. But you want to make sure you're getting some different looks. Whenever you're in training camp for 3 weeks, you're going against the same offense and same defense. So from both sides of the ball, right? You want to make sure that, okay, can we put ourselves in a position where, run against a different kind of look, a scout team, so to speak. And even if it's so let's say you say to the Cleveland Browns, okay, we're going to, you run a similar defense to us, but maybe there's a period where our offense can go against, a scout team type of defense with a different kind of look. You can do that with different kinds of players. That can happen. You might want to get some periods of red zone work in that you haven't gotten enough in throughout your training camp so far. 2-minute drill. That's a really big one. You always want to do 2-minute. You'll see a lot of that, probably a couple of those periods tomorrow. Make sure everybody's buttoned up on that, especially if you're the Browns and you want to see your quarterbacks run that 2-minute period because you don't have Josh Allen. You're going through a competition. You want to put your quarterbacks through the Browns in a position, in a situation where you can evaluate them a little bit better. Special teams, that's a big one. Both these teams want to make sure that they're buttoned up there because there's not a lot of time in preseason games to necessarily work on that. You can't predict that, how much you're going to get that. Heck, the Bills won a preseason game, didn't punt last week, right? So you want to get that kind of work in. You want to see your guys. I remember last year, Mike, one of the big things we saw last year was the gunner drill. I mean, they just went for 15 minutes on guys just basically going to cover punts and people beating them up physically down the field. And there was a lot of hooting and hollering when guys would beat, Tyrell Shavers was a big one. Tyrell Shavers did a great job. He got loose on one, and Bills players were going crazy because he made a play. Like, those are the kinds of things you want to see.
Well, I know how ridiculous this sounds. I'm used to it. But if you want to punt in a preseason game, just do it. Just who needs it to be fourth down? But yeah, I know. You don't have to tell me. The 2-minute thing, that's one where, as you know, of course, like, you can't necessarily control that in a preseason game, whether you're going to get that. So, I mean, you could pretend, but you'd have to be pretending. Like here, you can set that up. So that seems like a good suggestion.
Yeah, and even I think for the Bills, field goals, Tyler Bass, like that's something you want to do tomorrow, and I'm sure both teams will work on that in some capacity. You always wonder, I don't know if there'll be a live rush, not a live rush. You want to be careful here. You don't want to get anybody injured. The specialists and the quarterbacks will most likely have, different colored jerseys, so you're not running into them. You're not, touching them. That's a big one that I like. I love the one-on-one stuff at these joint practices. You see, when the Bills have practice, you go out to St. John Fisher, you'll see a period where the receivers are going against defensive backs, and it's one-on-ones. And it's great. And you want to see those guys. But a lot of times it's Christian Benford against DJ Moore. Christian Benford against DJ Moore. You're lining them up 3 times. Now you're going against different guys, different techniques. Same thing with the offensive line. You're going to get Deion Dawkins against Jared Verse. Mm-hmm. That's the cool stuff that I like to watch is these guys are very prideful, and they don't want to get beat in those situations. And you want to see those guys really kind of get after it and see, your guy against their guy one-on-one and who wins.
That'd be Denzel Ward now for DJ Moore if they're going top versus top in this practice in Cleveland. All right, well, tomorrow will be interesting, and we'll see how intense it is and what we learn from it. Sal Capaccio on the Wester Hotline. I'm Mike Schopp, and Bulldog is off through Friday. Sal, Jaden Higgins going down for Houston. Probably their wide receiver, too, out for the year. That's what every day of these practices, be they training camp or joint practice or anything, is what you're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
I wonder what you think, if you've thought about it, about that loss for the Texans. That's the Bills' Week 1 opponent. There's probably time, if they wanted, to go get somebody low on someone else's depth chart. People have mentioned Kayshon Boutte in New England. There's a Texans-Patriots connection there. I don't know, but Houston, it could have been Tank Dell, it seemed, but now they're talking about it probably won't be for the opener. And Higgins, they might be scrambling already for Week 1.
Yeah, I think you're everything. I don't think Tank Dell right now, it looks like he might not be ready, right? He might not play in the opener.
Unlikely.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. So it's a loss, no doubt. I mean, I was looking today, over 500 yards and 6 touchdowns his rookie year. Like, that's a really nice rookie year for Jaden Higgins. That's a tough loss for them. A guy we've talked about in Buffalo a lot has a connection there, Brandon Cooks. And there's some tie to the Patriots there too with him and some of the people in that organization. I wonder if that's a guy that they would reach out to, come in and have a kind of a, he's a veteran and he'd be able to walk right in and kind of pick up whatever they're doing. It's a loss for them for sure. I agree with you. You said, I think yesterday you said something about how the Texans have been getting, maybe it was today, Texans have been getting a little bit more run from some of the national pundits, right? And people are starting to like them a little bit. Warren Sharp talked and wrote about them a little bit, and I agree with that. And they're a fantastic defense, fantastic pass rush. They have a lot of talent on offense. I think there's a bit of a question on their offensive line, of course. The biggest question is what you've seen from Deshaun Watson. I'm sorry, I keep doing that. I'm thinking about Cleveland, and Deshaun was there. But C.J. Stroud. Biggest questions about C.J. Stroud. And I was a huge C.J. Stroud fan and thought this kid was going to be the next superstar after his rookie year. Obviously tailed off a little bit last year. He was inconsistent, had some nice games and nice moments, but not quite to the ascension that I thought he would have. And then in the playoffs, just did not perform very well. I mean, you're going to want to surround him with, the guys and the pieces to be able to truly, get him to where he probably should be ultimately. And losing Jaden Higgins is a pretty darn big deal, I think, for them.
Yeah, right. Big target that just can post up and, save a quarterback when he's under siege, which is a lot of what Stroud suffered from last year, not to make all the excuses for him. How about the Bills and their pass rush? As far away as that game still is, Sal, going into the season, like we've talked about Houston's strengths, and that's one of them, and what happened last year when the Bills went to Houston and how they struggled so badly to protect Allen. He was just always under duress. How about the other way around in this game? Like Houston, I don't know, it's a little bit early for this question maybe, but do you like, in general, the Bills' chances of making life tough on quarterbacks?
I like what I've seen so far at camp in preseason game from the Bills, outside linebackers, their edge rushers, their defensive scheme. We're not getting nearly the full plate, that's for sure. I mean, Jim Leonard has made that clear. Like they're not going to show what they're going to do in the regular season. But one thing that really stood out to me, Mike, from the preseason game and pretty quickly, and I tweeted this as soon as I saw it, is the Bills' team defensive speed has really improved. Mm-hmm. And they are really being aggressive, but they're also younger and more athletic. So I think you combine all of that, and you got to like their chances to maybe get after the passer a little bit better because of all that. But you take some of these guys individually, and T.J. Parker, I think, has been a really pleasant, surprise maybe to me as a first-round pick, the things that he can do, the athleticism he has for a big man. I think that really helps. Mike Dana, I mean, he's a freak. Who knows if he's going to make the team. He kind of had 2 sacks in one series, but just goes to show you some of these guys they have on this roster now that, I think that they feel confident they can put on the field and have the ability to get to the passer. And, of course, you have Bradley Chubb and Greg Rousseau and then Michael Hoyt. We didn't see him last week, but I like that group. And, the other day, right before the practice, Jim Leonard talked, and one thing that really stood out to me was a lot of times there's a lot of platitudes from the coaches. They have coach speak. He talked very highly about his group, like the edge rushers. And I believe what he was saying. Like, he really likes them. And, people talk about Von Miller and all this stuff in cryptic tweets and stuff like that. And he signs with the Dallas Cowboys. I wouldn't be surprised if it was because the Bills after a game go, look, we're good with what we have. We like what we have here. We don't need to go out and get another guy right there. So the question is going to be a question until it happens. But I like what I've seen so far from that group. And I especially like what I see from the collective of how athletic and fast they are and thinking about the possibilities that Jim Leonard's going to come up with.
Sal, I'm about out of time here, but before you go, what is the timeline for tomorrow, timetable?
Joe Brady will speak at 12:50 p.m. Practice will start at 1:20. Browns players will speak at 12 p.m. for anybody who's dialed in on that side of things. And then practice starts at 1:20. After practice, we will hear from Josh Allen. Then the team will have an off day on Friday, nothing going on there, and then Saturday will be the game.
All right, so you and I will fit something in mid-show, maybe. It seems like there could be an opportunity to do that. And will you stay there Friday? I guess you don't need to answer that. No.
I'll be there. I'll be in Cleveland through Saturday, so yeah.
All right. Thanks, Sal. Talk to you tomorrow.
You got it.
Sal Capaccio on the West Her Hotline. His appearances on WGR brought to you by Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case. What's your outlet? I'm Mike Schopp. Quick timeout. We'll talk some more next. This is WGR. I want to think he's not listening because, come on. But I know that those guys both will tune in to our show once in a while, so it's not 100% of an assumption. You never know if someone's listening. Joe Ostrowski, our great friend from Chicago that kind of like helped usher in for us a regular segment, which became a second one or a third on our show, thinking about Sam and Trista Crick. Joe would join us, and he has for several years now, on Thursdays, and he made public yesterday that he's battling testicular cancer. I talked to Joe. I've talked to him a couple of times, but most recently when I went to Chicago 3 weeks ago for the National Card Show and tried to meet up with him, but, it just didn't work out. And Joe went to Twitter yesterday or last night and said, this is what I'm dealing with. And any good thoughts in his direction would be appreciated by me and everybody here. He's always been so easy to work with. We had Joe on Thursdays, then we got Sam, or maybe Trista came first on Tuesdays, and then Sam. The company was pitching its BetQL at the time, or BetMGM people, and I thought, and Bulldog agreed, like, let's do that. I mean, these are interesting personalities and kind of open up a new kind of content. And Joe made that so easy for us to do. Such a nice guy. So rooting hard for him. And I've offered him, Bulldog knows this too, Thursdays if he wants to keep doing it. He's not in the, as they say, the space right now in terms of like sports betting content. And of course, he's dealing with his health personally. But I want him to do this if maybe it helps him. I don't know. Maybe he would like it. So that offer has been extended to Joe. You can check him out at Joe Ostrowski for more details on his struggle right now. The Bisons already played today. They lost to Lehigh Valley. Paul Hamilton told us about it. We'll have Paul in my conversation with him coming up. I am just thinking about the Sabres today, kind of randomly. There's no news or anything, and I wanted to talk to Paul about what the odds are that there will be any. Now that we're this far in to the off season, we're sort of around the corner, right? I mean, in 3 weeks they're on the ice, right? Pretty much. So is that? Like, do you get to a point in the off season where you just go forward with your team? I think, you can get it. This happens all the time. You can get into a season, have an injury or have a weakness, and, go fix that if you can. But I think that's a little strange to do right now, when now would be almost to the point where players are making plans to come in and starting to think about, as the offseason ends, all right, who have we got? Like, what does this look like? And let's get to work. And not that you, of course, can't amend that with a move, Hellebuck or whatever. Seems like, I think now we're maybe to the point, now I say this, and they'll do it tomorrow. I'll take credit for it if that happens. I'll be speaking it into existence. But, you sort of get closer to training camp and just sort of ride it out. Anyway, Paul's thoughts on that as we continue. Yankees in Baltimore tonight. The Jays are in Tampa. Boston is down 3-2 in the sixth to Arizona, and the Mets won. I already mentioned the Bison's result. Paul Hamilton after the update. Bulldog is off today. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.